is Sunder Pappu, Principal MIH Advisors.
Hey, Joseph Martino, VP IT at Primaris REIT. Good to be chatting with you again, Sunder.
Definitely, Joe. It's been, we've been talking about this for the last 2 years, and I think we are at a culmination right now to see where the industry is moving from an AI perspective within our industry. So let's actually get into the thing, and then basically, what do you see from your perspective, and then I'll see, I'll talk about, where, from my perspective, where the industry is moving.
Deal. Yeah. Well, just even being here in the environment live, I see from the discussions we were having yesterday in the Buildings AI, from the discussions all across, I would say, the conference, it feels like there's engagement and there's a lot of ambition around, in particular, AI initiatives.
Yep.
Yesterday we were talking a little bit about the partners and all of the services out there that are helping to support some of these initiatives within organizations. And I'm a rookie in real estate, and I came from software. Mm-hmm. And so outside of the real estate industry of software, I see that the teams in here and the services in here, partners, are at a level playing field. Yep. With industry in general. So I would say the state is looking very positive. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to be a part of it. I see that there's a lot of engagement.
So from my perspective, I think it's like about three to 4 years ago, I made a pitch at this very conference to say, hey, this is a technology that's coming through, and how do we actually move forward? We talked about this in 2003, where we actually came forward to show some of the demos. And it was very happy to see yesterday, when people said, everyone in the audience said that they had heard, they're actually doing something in the field of generative AI. And, I can see that particular trend continuing to go into agent AI and then into agentic AI, probably faster than what we have seen the first time around. So, yeah. From an overall perspective, the state of the industry, at least from an AI perspective, is moving faster than all the other technologies that I've seen in the past. So that's a good thing, and I think hopefully this continues as we move forward.
So. Yeah, yesterday in session, we had sort of a breakout session where I would say there's probably about 50 to 80 companies represented in there. And we were talking about co-pilots, and not just generic, or not just Microsoft co-pilots, but generic co-pilots in general, enterprise chat, productivity tools within the organization that were formed using AI or developed using AI. And everyone in the room put up their hand to say, we have one of these initiatives kicked off, started, or maybe even a little further into the maturity of that product. Yeah. And so I think a year ago or 2 years ago, when we were having this discussion, we didn't have that, that mass. And now I think the critical mass is here. And I think, like I said, the partner ecosystem is at the table. I think all, real estate owner operators are at the table. And now I think it's proliferating. So, talking more about, less about policy and implementing, foundational items like data. That's kind of a thing of the past. And I think now it's more moved into, okay, so assuming we're ready, what are some of the activities now that we can put into our roadmap that are related to AI? And I think that's what you're hearing in the room. You're hearing so many different use cases. I think it was a struggle in the past to get a lot of the use cases out. Where can we use this? Now I think you're seeing real pertinent use cases. You're seeing people understand how to architect this and solution it and bring it into the organization to solve business problems. This morning, EY had a presentation and talking about the real estate industry being laggards and where we can focus, and talking about moving from productivity more into property management, and really where the ROI can be felt. And I'm hearing those conversations. It sounds like we're moving towards those types of things. So overall, very positive sentiment.
Definitely, and even from the partner side of things, right? So you look at I'm looking at some of the big names in the at this particular conference, like the Yardi, the MI. They were actually they have embraced that particular AI piece of it. I see Predict AP over there, they are actually taking a concept that I basically, we were talking about, and they actually built something that's basically driven through AI. Sherry, for example, they're actually revolutionizing it, saying, hey, look at the data first before you actually move forward. So, I think within our industry itself, you're seeing that ecosystem that's basically building up. And hopefully, that particular group can actually, and others here, can all come together and basically build that particular next phase of actually driving AI, something which is autonomous that will drive, in the future.
Coming together, I think, is exactly the point. Right. You hear the conversations on both sides, and we were just talking a little bit with Yardi backstage, and talking about their agentic implementation, and some things that are important to me, and interoperability and accessibility to data across an agentic framework. We thought we'd be talking about this a couple of years ago, is something that they're looking at and developing for currently. So the conversations that are happening here, thank you, to Realcomm and the community, bring these conversations together, and we're getting needs, wants, and ROI all in one conference and community.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think most of the times wherein we always look at hey, here's a new technology, how does it impact, what I do, what's the ROI that's actually going to, get. I think this is a great forum to actually be in, wherein people can actually see, other companies, how they implement it, what's the ROI that they get, or anything, from an overall perspective, learn from that particular learning. So I think we have, that first hurdle of taking the risk has already been done. So now let's take the next step of creating and driving that forward. Yeah. I think that's where the industry has to move. And I feel that, we are at a stage right now, we have to move faster than what we were in the past. And I think that was what what was stressed yesterday and today. So hopefully that continues. Hopefully the next time, we all meet here, we'll have other use cases that we can actually.
Any predictions for what next year would look like?
I think that, based on what I've been talking to people, this year will all be about agents AI across the industry, right? So not in real estate, but you'll see a lot more companies that'll be, real estate companies doing agent AI, using a lot of digital agents in their particular businesses. Yeah. And I see that, hands-on.
Proliferation of agents.
Exactly, across the board. And that's something that I can see happening soon.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to be a part of the conversation, help build out, some of the standards and interoperability. Like I said, I think that's the key thing, is to keep the conversation going.
Agreed. And I think that's basically, I think from an industry perspective, consulting, that's what I've been doing over the last 7 months. I see our industry is ripe because there are other industries that have already done that. We can lean from their learnings and then apply to our industry. And I think that's the key to basically, move forward.
Agreed. I think this was a fun conversation. Yes.
Right, agreed, yeah. So I think, looking forward to where things head, and then, when we meet next year, at this particular conference, I think it'll be a different, what's the future, what are the new technologies and how it drives.
Yeah, forward. Agreed. I'm excited to see what comes.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sunder.